Well, hey everybody, welcome back to another video, and today is going to be a little bit different. You might notice there's something glaring right here behind me. I'll go ahead and tell you kind of the full story, what happened in Hurricane Ian, and ultimately where DreamChaser is. And I will share with you, she had some damage and we ended up selling her, but more on that in just a little bit. This is the story about why we now have water behind us here and not our boat sitting directly at the dock. So as you guys likely know, a few months ago we had Hurricane Ian come through this part of where we live. It was a direct hit right on our town, and at the end of the day, I'll complain about some of the damage we have, and you'll hear me talk about it, but understand I am fully grateful. We are in our home is standing. We have some damage for sure, but it is comparable to so many others, so much better. So let me just keep this focused directly on the boat. So we evacuated town during the hurricane. We came back afterwards. Boat still sitting right here at our docks, tied up the way we had left it. Obviously it had some damage, and I am unbelievably grateful at the fact that it was even still here. I was frankly really worried that at 60,000 pounds with that kind of wind for that long, that she would have broken loose of her lines and left. Kind of talk a little bit about some of the prep work we did specifically for the boat. Where we are on this canal, we are about 8 or so houses from the open water. That's where it goes out. Our dock specifically has 6 big pylons on it, and we were tied to those pylons. So as you can imagine, we double tied everything, had spring lines going back and forth, did all the things you would sort of expect to do tying up the boat. Additionally, we tied the boat to a palm tree over here, and then I went and bought these 3-foot metal augers that you drill down in the ground. They're actually for anchoring mobile homes down on their foundational base. But we put 2 of those in the yard, and we tied the boat to those as well, thinking if everything else broke loose, we would at least have that. All that prep work, when we got back, we had lost 5 of the 6 pylons. 1 of those ground stakes had pulled out, and the only thing still holding the boat up was the 1 pylon that's leaning over, and the palm tree, and 1 ground anchor. So I'm unbelievably grateful that we put those in. Had we not, we would have lost the boat for sure, and gosh only knows the damage it would have done to other boats as it worked its way out of the canal here. So that is sort of the scenario of what happened. In the grand scheme of things, I can't believe this son of a bitch is floating. From the perspective of just how strong were the winds, where we were just under 150 mile an hour winds, and that was sustained for 24 to 35 hours or so, right? Day and a half as the front of the eye came by and then the back of the eye. So that just gives you a little bit of an idea on what we sustained. At the end of the day, I am still unbelievably pleased that the boat was still here, but she sustained some damage. And as I'm looking out toward the water right now, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 houses with tarps over them right now, where their roofs are damaged and leaking. I see others with tiles broken all throughout them. So without a doubt, this was a heavy storm. And unfortunately, it did take a toll on DreamChaser, and I'll share some of the details of what happened with that. So as you can imagine, right, we come back to the house, we check out the house, and then we come to the back to look at the boat, and we are amazingly surprised that the boat is still here, and we're thrilled by that fact. But as you dig in deeper, you start to see more. Obviously, where the pylons had all fallen, she had beat into the dock pretty hard, knocked the aluminum ladder down off of it, and then the concrete was just running into her side. And there are concrete slabs on concrete pylons. You're not allowed to have any wooden docks in this area, so everything's concrete. So she bashed into that, repeatedly during the whole storm, and then thereafter, because there were no pylons to keep it from just hitting into what was left when the pylons were gone, which was ultimately the corner of the concrete dock. It did not put a complete hole in the side of her hull, but it did give her quite a rash, and while I'm talking, I'll show some videos of images of what the side looked like. As you get higher up the side of the hull, where we did end up seeing damage, where the lines came through the side of the boat and went to different ties, it actually ripped that completely off. So there's going to need to be work done right here
and that does mean the hull to deck joint, when it rains, some water goes down in that and goes down into the bilge, sadly. And you can see the bent rail right here. That's probably the only section that's bent, along with this top rail right there.
Doesn't sound horrible, and at the end of the day, you kind of look at it and go, okay, well, that's certainly fixable. But with us getting 30 some odd inches of rain over that time of the storm, all that water landing on the deck, running down it, now was no longer running and being forced down to the scuppers. It was actually running right down inside the boat between the two inner and outer hulls. Again, we're lucky because it didn't just go into like the salon, it went between the two pieces of fiberglass, so the inner shell and the outer shell. What that meant is it filled the bilge. The bilge is what started getting water in it. We probably had 2.5, 3 feet of water in the bilge. The entire bilge filled up just to the very bottom of the oil pan. It was just scraping the oil pan. Now, I didn't go down into that water and look on the backside. The engine sits at an angle. It's lower in the back. Keep in mind the oil pan drips down lower and then comes up higher. Potentially some of the drive shaft and U-joints could have been a little bit underwater. I do not believe they were, but we certainly had all that water that sat in the boat now for some period of time, right? I pumped probably 6, 8, 10 inches of it out just to make sure it was down off the bottom of the motor, but I made sure that I left it in there so that when the insurance came out, they could come look at it, right? We pumped it out again afterwards. You might ask yourself, why was it in there? Why didn't it pump out with the bilge pumps? Well, good question, but when you think about all the fiberglass and all the things that tore up on the top, all that debris went down below, it clogged not just one, but both of the actual bilge pumps. Our third emergency pump is manually controlled. We were not here to manually control it. That one could have potentially pumped it out sooner. Obviously, with that amount of sustained wind, we had other things that happened too. The sail covers were just torn up. I took the jib and the interstitial off and folded them up, put them in the garage. I left the actual sails on them because I had them down and wrapped around the booms. I sausage tied them up with a rope, and then I put the cover over and I sausage tied that with a rope, thinking that that would be enough and keep it there. But that constant battering with wind at that sort of speed just completely tore up those covers. They were still there, but unusable after this. They had to be pulled off and replaced. So we had those two damaged. The front sail was damaged a little bit. I don't believe the back one was, and obviously the two that were in the garage were just fine. So fast forward several weeks and we get notification from the insurance company that they are totaling the boat. And I'm sure you know the way totaling works. If the damages exceed a certain amount according to or compared to the agreed hull value, they total it, they pay you that agreed hull value, and then they haul off the boat. So that's what they were proposing for us. And just so you know this, if you buy a used boat, you tend to have a agreed hull value. We still left ours with the amount we paid for the boat, less its depreciation every year. So we paid, let's say, $55 for it, and I think our insurance had an agreed value at like $44 or something like that. You take out your deductible and you end up with your payment that would be less than that, right? $39,000 or something like that. So that's it. That's all. To put that in perspective, the last yard bill we had was just under $90,000. So, you start to say, does it pay for everything? And the answer is absolutely not. But when you're a boater, it's your habit, it's your desire, it's what you do. It just doesn't work that way, and you know it. You just hope this doesn't happen. So Deb and I lamented about this for a little bit of time, right? The sort of agreement, what they tend to do is they say, okay, well, we're going to send you a check as soon as you give us some certain information, and we will arrange for a salvage company to come out. They will connect to the boat, they'll tow it off, and they'll get rid of it. I don't know what they do with it. They might auction it, but all I had in my head was this thought that if they do that, the boat may very well end up sitting in some field or parking lot and eventually get a backhoe digging into it and just breaking it up in pieces that fit in a dumpster. And I couldn't stomach that for the boat. Deb and I considered for quite some time, okay, maybe let's just leave it. Like, it's still there. We'll pump the water out. We'll repair all this damage. I can do most of that work myself. God knows I've done a ton of this kind of work over the years, and we'll have the boat back and we'll be in great shape. But candidly, I wasn't ready to redo this boat again. I mean, we have spent 6 years refitting and refitting and working on it. And with a boat of this age, there's constant work you're always doing. That's just part of boat ownership. But now I had this compounded with the regular items plus all of this extra, and I did not feel up to it any longer. It's surprising, and for those of you who watched our channel for a while, you know we lived aboard and cruised, and for a while after we had custody of our grandkids, we stayed in a marina with them. They weren't necessarily interested in this dream of sailing off somewhere, so we tried to stay in a few less areas for sure. And you know, it wasn't a passion of theirs. It became to be a fight on time. We ended up moving into a house again, but getting back into a regular house, and at that stage, I sort of knew my time would be divided between boat activities, house activities, and other sort of distractions of, you know, the family, raising the family. I don't mean distractions, you guys know what I mean. I knew that the time I would be able to spend and devote to the boat was going down, and frankly, it had gone down even more with knowing that we needed to take care of the house and all the storm damage here, as well as the boat. It just wasn't something I was ready to commit to again. So that's kind of where we sat, and Deb and I considered this for several weeks. We weren't sure of the next step. So where we ultimately landed was, I would love for this boat to be used by somebody that's a cruiser or a passionate person about these style boats. There's just not that many of these leaky tikis out there anymore, and they're a lot to maintain, but they are gorgeous, and their lines just speak to you if you are a lover of these boats. Any Bill Garden design to me is just phenomenal, and I think the Formosa 51 is one of the best looking ones out there. Obviously, I'm biased. So with that, Deb and I thought, you know what, if we can give somebody else that is really interested and passionate, maybe a bit newer into this and really wants to start going in and doing all this repair work and getting the boat ready for them, what a great opportunity to give somebody a chance to have a boat like this at a low entry point, because it takes a low entry point, right? Unless you're going to throw a couple of $100,000 at it right away, it takes a low entry point to stay in it, manage it, maintain it, and do all that kind of stuff. So we decided to go ahead and put it out there for sale. We went to some of the classic forums just for these boats, right? People that either own the boats or are interested in them. We put a couple of ads out there. We had one guy come take a look at it. He's like, gosh, I don't know if I can get it insured to put in my marina, so I'm not sure I want to do it. And we found a lovely family, right? That he has a boat, she and her kids have a boat. One of those boats was damaged during a hurricane, so they were sort of down to one, and they were looking to get a bigger boat for all of them to cruise on. And this just happened to really work out great. They are passionate about this kind of things. They like doing the work on them. They wanted the extra space, and it just sort of worked out. And what was really cool for us is we were able to sell the boat, not for what we thought we could get for it. Quite frankly, all I did was doubled the amount that they were going to take off of my payment for me to keep the boat. So we're talking a small entry fee. So we started talking to them on the phone, kind of arranged all the details, knowing that we'd have to work out some of the timing of all of this. They came out, looked at the boat, absolutely liked it. They said, yeah, we really want to do this. You know, wanted to give us a down payment. I'm like, you know, you're fine. Like, we're not going to sell it. If you want it, you want it. They came back the next weekend, mainly to do work on it, right? Because we needed to make sure that she would start and run and all this stuff. She hasn't now run in, gosh, it's 4 months, 4.5 months since before the hurricane. And I said, look, I'm not going to do any of the work. If you want to do it, you're more than welcome to do it. And they absolutely did. He went down below. Turned out there was a fuel line that actually had an air leak in it, oddly enough. I don't know if bashing it around knocked something loose or what, but that was something they fixed. Obviously, all the batteries were dead, charged all those up. And after staying out on the boat for a weekend, a long weekend, they got the boat running and up and going. And with that, the deal was done. I did ask that they would hire a towing company to pull it out of here. It would be so hard to maneuver in here, and with the batteries so dead, the bow thruster wasn't all that reliable. It wasn't giving it enough thrust. I didn't want a chance trying to turn that thing around in here. So we hooked up sea tow, and they just hauled them to the end of the canal where they powered up and motor on down to Key West, and that's exactly what they did. So I'm thrilled for the new owners of the boat. I think they got a great deal. Obviously, I'm biased in this. Everybody would make their own decision, but they have a phenomenal platform to build an amazing live-aboard cruising sailboat, and they don't have all that far to go. I mean, I hate to venture this guess, but I know we put over $200,000 into that boat in the last 5 years. So you know, to get that for you know, gosh, for 5% or so of the value of what we put into it is a great deal, and I hope that they are thrilled with it as well. You know, I was a little bit struck. I knew it was going to bother me a little bit. I had mentally prepared for it. I was a little surprised that both grandkids and even my daughter, my grown daughter, were crying when it left. Like they were really a bit surprised, and they didn't think that that would be their reaction, and it was. So even after they pulled out of here and, you know, they turned around, the towboats dropped them, and they started motoring out the canal here. Whit and I got in the car and we drove down to the little park here where we could see them motor on out, and yeah, it was really nice. I stayed in contact with them over the next couple of days. They anchored out in Charlotte Harbor the first night. They went down to Fort Myers the second day, nice slow pace, and then from there they went off from past Naples and all the way down to Key West, and you know, got to Key West. I think for them it ended up being a three and a half, maybe 4-day trip because they had some stops. But yeah, that is the story of DreamChaser. So as of right now, the irony of that is the name of this YouTube channel is SV DreamChaser, and there is no SV DreamChaser. I'm still coming to terms with it, quite frankly, but there is no doubt in my mind there will be another boat out here. The question is, will it be a sailboat or will it be a powerboat? I'm thinking it might be a powerboat, and I know it's going to be a lot smaller. It's going to be something we can hop in and go out and do our thing out here, but that cruising live-aboard lifestyle is not gone with me, and who knows, we'll probably go rent a boat down in the Caribbean every couple of years or something. We've got to get that fix in. So I hope you guys enjoyed this story. With that, I'll see you all next time for the last time from the owner of the sailing vessel DreamChaser, or the ex-owner.